I just want to, first of all, introduce myself. I'm Moose. I'm the managing partner at Marauder. We're the company that runs Independent Venue Week in the US, and also the executive director of NIVA, which is the presenter for this conversation that's about to be had during Independent Venue Week. So I get to wear both hats for this one. And I also want to thank you for joining us for what is the first ever Independent Venue Week panel series. We're calling it IVW 20 Talks. This session is titled NIVA Presents Life Off the Road 2020 from the Artist Perspective. And Independent Venue Week has over 140 participating venues in 80 cities across 33 states. This edition is the biggest one yet. It's also more urgent and relevant than ever as we face the potential loss of up to 90% of independent venues in the US. Independent Venue Week is, as another first, hosting an auction benefiting the NIVA Emergency Relief Fund to help those in the most need. And that auction is, I think, coming to an end around noon Eastern tomorrow. And there are plenty of pretty cool stuff on there, like signed instruments and posters and limited edition releases. We at Marauder, the producers behind the American edition of Independent Venue Week, would like to take this opportunity to thank every single venue, artist, and donor helping to make this year's event happen. And a special thank you to our partners, Eventbrite, Big Room, Ascend Insurance Brokerage, and School of Rock. I urge you to check out independentvenueweek.com for this week's full program and an overview of the individual auction items. Now, I welcome you to NIVA Presents Life Off the Road 2020 from the Artist Perspective, and hand it over to Pete McDevitt from Belly Up.
Thanks, Moose. I'm Pete McDevitt. I'm the talent buyer for the Belly Up in Solana Beach, which is in the greater San Diego area. Thanks to Independent Venue Week and NIVA for putting this event together, and thanks to our guests for participating here. Speaking of our guests, it's my pleasure to introduce them. We have Adam from Murder by Death, Alicia from Bully, and Jim from Jimmy Eat World. So Adam is lead singer, guitarist, and co-manager of Murder by Death. They were in the middle of their 20th anniversary tour when the pandemic first sort of reared its ugly head in the US. Bully is Alicia's solo project. She just put out the fantastic record Sugar Egg this past August via Sub Pop. And Jim is the lead vocalist and guitarist of Jimmy Eat World. Jimmy Eat World's 10th studio album, Surviving, came out last October, which feels like ages ago to most of us at this point. Jim also hosts a podcast series called Pass Through Frequencies that focuses on the creative process and the craft of songwriting through conversations with fellow artists. Let's take a second here to give our guests here a chance to talk about themselves a bit and their own backstory. So Adam, let's start with you.
All right, sure, yeah. So I guess I started this band with some friends when we were 18 years old, and yeah, like you said, this was our year where it was 20 years from our first show, and so we were out doing like a big run of dates and shows in Europe and all over the place, and we were in the middle of the tour when everything started to happen, and we started to see sort of that become a big talking point, and we're obsessively looking on our phones, trying to figure out, are we going home? Are we playing tomorrow? And then eventually, when we were in Minneapolis, it just became apparent that it was time to call it a day, and we went home with probably about 40 shows left on the books and about 40 more that were just not announced yet. And it was a pretty stressful first couple of months trying to do the damage control. It was pretty wild. And we live all over the country. We live in Oregon, Georgia, Kentucky, Colorado, and Missouri, and then our crews in Kansas and California. So we had to get home, and that was pretty wild because the airports were. It was just a crazy time to be alive. But yeah, my wife Sarah, the cellist, we've been home in Kentucky and just trying to figure things out for our band. And we also have a restaurant, so we got the double dip. So it's been a real delight.
Alicia, you want to take a second to talk a bit about Bully and what's been going on for you?
Yeah, I had a record come out. I don't know if it's what month is it? Like almost 2 months ago, pretty much. Yeah. And I'm just supposed to be touring now for was supposed to be for the next 2 years. So, but that's clearly not happening. But yeah, based out of Nashville from Minneapolis. I've been in Tennessee for like 12 years now. So that's really the gist of it.
Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim. I shouldn't even be here today. I should be on the road. Yeah, I'm from Arizona. Grew up here. Played in various punk rock bands wherever we could, and I've somehow managed to stay doing that for my adult life. I've been really fortunate. Yeah, it's Groundhog Day again. But it's really nice to be here and see. You know, we're really not alone in this, and this is a really small slice of all the people that are in exactly the same situation. So it's great to be here and hang out with you guys.
Jim, what's that trophy?
It's for a sold out show at Bogart's.
Oh, cool.
They give out bowling trophies for people who do have a sellout show there.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
I love that. So, one thing just to let everybody know, we will save some time at the end for some questions from the audience. So if anyone has any questions as they relate to the topics that we're discussing here, you can just throw your question in the chat and we'll try to address it here at the end. So Adam, as you mentioned, you guys were on the road when everything essentially turned to shit. So, I mean, where were you at when you found out that the show in Madison was going to have to get canceled? Was it the night before when you were in Minneapolis, or?
So we had, it was kind of over a couple days. I mean, we had a show at the Ogden in Denver. It was just a banger of a night. And that was kind of the last, then we played Lawrence the next night. And then the talk of things kind of turning started happening, and we started to freak out like, oh, what are our ability to the audience? When are we supposed to act? So we were looking for some kind of guidance. And then after the Lawrence show, we had 2 days off where we were in Des Moines, Iowa, and we played the Des Moines show, and the talk had really increased. And then we noticed that the drop counts were lower, like the amount of people that bought tickets versus how many showed up. So we thought, oh, okay, something's really happening here. And we got to Minneapolis, and by the time we got to the show, we thought this is probably going to be our last show. And 10 minutes before we went on, we found out that the sold-out show in Madison the next day was canceled. And we had 2 nights in Chicago at Thalia Hall after that, sold out, that we were like, well, if Madison's canceled, it's not safe. And like the idea of putting that many people in a room together, especially since they were going to be at capacity, that was freaking us out. The idea that there's no way to cut the venue in half to make it spread out, or, there's just no way to fix it. So we just basically, we woke up on the morning of, I guess it would have been the 13th, Friday the 13th. And we went to a diner together in Minneapolis, and we said, well, what are we doing? And some people just like jumped in a cab and went to the airport, and some people got rides from friends, and then we dropped off a few people, and I drove home to Kentucky from Minneapolis with Sarah that day. It was nuts. And we had just ordered like 40 boxes of merch to show up in Chicago, and we had to like rent a vehicle to pick up the merch to take it home, because we didn't want to leave it with them. It was just insult to injury. it was bullshit. But
yeah,
we got home.
I'm sure.
We got home safe. We all got, nobody got COVID, thank God. I mean, was a weird couple days though, and so much depression around canceling what was one of the most fun tours I've ever done. So it was, just seeing that kind of go up in a puff of smoke was really hard. And also we had just ordered, like, we had spent all the money for the tour, all the things required for like all the expenses, and we just owed all that money all of a sudden. That was really scary.
Yeah, I can relate. Jim, for you, Jimmy Eat World was getting ready to head to Australia. I think the first show in Australia was supposed to be March 16th. And I'm sure that there was a ton of prep that had already gone into heading overseas. So, you know, what was that like for you? What was your sort of moment of, oh God, this is all crumbling?
Yeah, it was heartbreaking, man. That's one of my favorite places in the world to go. And it was on a Pacific Rim run that would have had us going to some new places. Like we had a gig booked in Manila, and then Singapore, and then, you know, Perth to Sydney doing festivals, and then New Zealand, and then Japan, and then Hawaii. And it was like one by one, it's like, no, Manila's not happening. Singapore's not happening. Australia might happen. Australia's not happening. That means nothing's happening. And that was 3 days before we left for tour. My gear got a good ride to Australia and back. It's a bummer it can't put those frequent flyer miles to our tallies, but yeah, it was rough, man. Like, okay, nothing's happening. And I think it was like, I guess I was sort of in shock, you know. My brain just kind of instantly went to, okay, this is totally, because like my whole thing is trying to focus on what I can do and sort of letting go of what I can't do, because that's really the only way I can emotionally, mentally survive anyway. So I was like, okay, this is gone. I'm gonna do this. What can I do? I'm gonna do this. And it really didn't let in the fact that my entire year had been just destroyed until
Did it feel
like about a month.
Was it a little bit of a sense of denial in those early stages that the dates later in the year would be able to happen?
Yeah,
or?
It was definitely a lack of acceptance and kind of like fast forwarding to the action part without really accepting what the reality of what had just happened. That didn't sink in till later, and then it was kind of a crippling depression. I'm better now.
Sure.
I worked through it, but yeah, it was a rough summer.
And then Alicia, you know, you weren't on tour at the time, but obviously you had a lot of tour plans for the year with the album release. So, you know, at what point for you did it sort of seem like everything's going to just sort of go away as far as playing shows go?
Well, for the first thing was kind of having to keep pushing back the. Sorry, there's like an echo going on. I don't know where it's coming from. But to keep pushing back the single, that was kind of the main thing that was getting pushed back the most, because, well, we pushed back the release date, then we were going to push back the single kind of based off touring, and then we just kind of realized that we can't wait anymore, so we just decided to put it out. And then yeah, I mean, I think pretty quickly it was just, we knew that touring wasn't going to happen for the foreseeable future. So shortly after that, it was just kind of figuring out how we can like try and navigate keeping buzz going throughout. And now even after, it's just kind of like a daily thing. A lot of it has turned to social media, but we pretty quickly were just like, all right, well, what do we need to do to kind of like adapt to the idea of not being able to promote this record on the road and do press and stuff on the road. So yeah, it was realizing that wasn't going to happen, and then trying a bunch of different things out that I probably wouldn't have done before, like solo live streams and stuff like that.
So at what point did you guys reach the conclusion that you couldn't delay the record anymore? Really,
it was just know exactly how long it was into the pandemic, but I think once we realized it wasn't just like going to be a few weeks of shutting down, everybody at Sub Pop, I mean, we discussed waiting to put it out until we could, this would pass. And then it must have been like a month or two in, we just realized that we couldn't wait forever and we don't know when that's going to be. And now I'm glad that we didn't, I think. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it like financially, I wanted to put it out too for a lot of reasons. I mean, I hadn't been on the road for a year and a half really before that. And yeah, so.
So, speaking of the record and promoting the album, what sort of challenges have you faced with having a new record out without being able to play shows?
There's been a ton. I mean, I think the big one is that a lot of the press outlets through that time and still now, but we had pushed it back, and then the George Floyd shooting happened and we pushed it back again because it just felt insensitive to put anything out. And then, like I said, we couldn't push it back anymore. And I think the biggest thing, a really big thing, was that a lot of press outlets weren't really focusing on music at the time, which is totally understandable. There's like a lot more important things going on than people reviewing a record. So that's totally fine. But it was kind of trying to figure out ways to be creative. It really all sort of switched to social media, which I already have never really been a huge fan of. So I kind of just had to give a lot of control over to management and the people working for them to keep that going. So it was just like making a schedule. It was doing live streams, and Bully is a rock band. It's like a loud live thing. That's part of it. And so having to strip that down and do live streams was just not something that I ever thought I would have to do. So it was just like going back to the drawing board and kind of figuring out how to play those songs alone. And a lot of it was like turning to pedals and stuff and trying to get creative with that. But after the first one and just being able to have that reassurance that Bully's audience was receptive to that and liked it, it was easier after that because I didn't feel as much, I wasn't as insecure about it. But yeah, a lot of social media, live streams, and then press has just been kind of a pain because I feel like it really depends on your setup, but it's a bunch of like, here, record this one song and we want it in this medium and we want the camera to be whatever stats and then turn it all in. And it's a lot easier to ask for that than it is to like actually do it, I think. I know. And so it's just really time consuming because normally you just pop into a radio station, play, and then leave. But now it's like this whole process of doing it, and then it's just you. So if you feel like it sucked, you're going to do it again, probably like a million more times. And that's really one of the most frustrating parts, was just how much time it took. Like even now, I feel like I'm being asked in interviews, like, like, have you been creative or used this time to write? It's like, no, I've just, so much of my time has been eaten up on my phone, like posting on social media and doing all that stuff. And then a bunch of other stuff for charities on top of it, which is great. But yeah, so it's just been really time consuming and strange. And then now it's just kind of bleak because it's just still doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. So, and then, the fact that venues are all losing money and not having enough to potentially reopen, and like the idea of touring, and if it's going to be like a door deal for everything, because guarantees I feel like aren't going to be there. Just like the whole idea of even being back on the road is really intimidating.
Sure. And Jim, this sort of question applies to you as well. With Surviving coming out towards the end of last year, you guys were essentially at the start of the touring cycle for your album cycle, right?
Yeah, the bulk of our touring for the record was going to be starting right when we were about to leave. Like we had our last gig was December 12th, I think. And then we had a couple months off, and we were going to pick it up at the beginning of March, and that didn't happen. So we got 27 gigs in for the record. In a regular recycle, it's more like close to 200. So yeah,
So
that was
do you
kind of
think that the inability to tour on this record has sort of changed your just album cycle in general? Like, do you think when shows happen again, are you going to be touring in support of Surviving still, or?
Well, I think the most rosy, optimistic outlook that people I've seen agree on is maybe summer of next year, but I'm not holding my breath for that. So, let's say realistically, end of summer, September-ish. Are people going to be stoked for a record came out October 2019 and 2021, almost 2 years later? Like, I don't know. Probably not. Like, so much has happened since then. It's going to be like, I've made a joke that we should, if that is the case, we'll sell t-shirts that say like Surviving feels like parentheses the 20th anniversary tour. Because by then it'll feel like 20 years have gone by. No, the reality is that record's probably over. I mean, whatever things we do now are technically in support of that, but it's not like, I've kind of come to peace with it more or less being over. Like, there's really a finite level of what we can do. Like, unlike, Alicia, you were doing like press and stuff because it just came out, but we did all of our press. Our press push was like last year. So like, it's kind of old news even now in the scheme of things. So it's more or less over, but I haven't been exactly the most motivated to be creative to fill a replacement for that lately. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Do you feel like your creative energy has sort of been invested in the podcast more, or?
Well, I feel like I had to do something, and the talking to other people about songs is really something that I love doing anyway. And I've always thought that we've been a group that I don't think we've ever really chased an outside idea of what we should do or how we should present ourselves. And we've kind of paid a little bit of price for that. Like we're fairly anonymous, I think, in our daily life, and we're not like the most flashy people to begin with. So there's sort of a lack of I don't know how you describe it. Like, what's that, Adam? So I just thought like the best thing I can do is think about what I like and who I am and try to present an amplified version of what that is. And maybe some people come along for that. Cool. But maybe they don't. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I feel that's really the best you can do, because and the podcast and talking to people about songwriting is something I've been interested in. So I thought, I have time for that. Let's try it.
Sure.
So my effort has been doing that, but it's not it's not exactly the one for one is the same as like talking about writing songs. Is a lot different than writing songs.
Sure. I want to talk a little bit about just, how it's been with rescheduling everything and all these changing and shifting timelines with stuff. So, for Jim, I know, you guys had some US dates and Canadian dates in April that were rescheduled for, I think it was September. At what point did it sort of start to feel fruitless to even consider rescheduling for a second or third time for stuff? Was the motivation behind that just sort of like, well, we don't know what we're doing, let's give the fans back their money and let's just start anew? Or
yeah, just the uncertainty of keep pushing things back and rescheduling was it just seemed like the reality of it sunk in, and we're going to be here a while, so it's sort of pointless to give people hope. because we don't know. I mean, I feel bad like taking people's money when I can't really guarantee what they're buying is going to be there.
Sure. And Adam, for you, you guys are supposed to be playing your cave shows this weekend, which obviously is a big show and sort of a special event of sorts. Between that and your Stanley Hotel shows that you do annually, what sort of frustrations have you found with trying to reschedule gigs for timeframes that are still uncertain for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's my sense of obligation to people, feeling like, oh, well, I don't want to, like Jim said, I don't want to promise something. But also, I mean, we were in such a position where, we were on tour. So the March dates got pushed back to July. And we thought 4 months, nothing has ever been shut down ever in 20 years of touring. 4 months is plenty of time. Then those got pushed to March 2021. And guess what? They're getting pushed again. And I don't even know when they're getting pushed to now. I basically told the manager, I don't know, man. Just put it whenever, like whenever you think it'll happen. But we took that as an opportunity. Like the day we announced that we were postponing, I kind of took a different stance than Jim, even though I don't disagree with him. Because that we had already sold all these tickets, I imagined what would happen to each of those independent venues if there was suddenly refunds, even just for our show, let alone a lot of other shows. And I asked fans to not ask for refunds if they can afford it, so that the venue didn't have to, pay back all these costs and then just go belly up, so to speak. And it's just so, sorry, I know. I'm old. I'm allowed to make jokes.
You had to do it.
I'm a dog dad. I can make jokes like that. So yeah, I mean, I was just trying to think of like, well, I want to play this venue in the future. I want it to be there. And I can't imagine, like, it's a $25 ticket for the most part for our shows. And I thought, okay, well, it's like if one venue has X amount of tickets, that's a huge amount of money that just for our show to refund, that might be keeping the lights on. And maybe, through the sort of idea of, the group helping out, like, a bunch of people pitching in $25 might be the difference between the venue being there next time we are trying to tour. And so I took that stance at the time. I will say I was so naive about how long this is going to last. And my little optimistic brain was underestimating this whole, the duration and the extent of this pandemic. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
well,
like,
I think a lot of us at the beginning were not expecting this to go on for as long as it has, I personally rescheduled a bunch of shows into the summer and fall myself. At one point, I think I was telling people, I hope we can have shows in May, which was obviously very naive for myself to think that sort of thing. And here we find ourselves at almost Halloween. And there still isn't a clear timeline on when anything's going to change. Obviously over the course of the past several months, everybody has had to sort of pivot into new ways to, stay engaged with the fans and stay sort of, I don't want to say relevant, but just to sort of keep the band's brand, out there and on people's minds and everything. And we've talked a little bit about live streaming already, but so Alicia, were you the first artist to do a live stream on Noon Chorus? I know you were one of the first.
Wait, can I ask Adam something really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just about when did you guys have the conversation about pushing back the March 2021 dates?
It's been in the last week or so, and it was just sort of, I think people are just, I think the people at a lot of the venues and the agents, you know, they're working for free right now to do all that work, to coordinate together, to push back. And I think there's just a point where they want it to be the last time that they push back, because we've rescheduled so many times. So I think it's just a recent, I have no concept or inside scoop on when I think, you know, we'll be able to do this, but March seems a little soon, I guess, in my brain.
That's like the thing, and sorry to interrupt your question, but it's like I feel like every day it's kind of like, wait, who's got the scoop on when touring's going to start again?
Yeah, I almost asked both of you and Jim, just be like, so what are people in your camp saying? You know, like, what's the cool talk?
I've heard realistically fall 2021, but I know some people are still crossing their fingers for spring. So yeah, I wanted to see if you knew something I didn't.
I'll say that we
well, I think we're all just stuck in this guessing game, you know. Depending on what part of the country you're in, your guess might be sooner than someone who's in a different part of the country. You know, we've already seen some shows start to happen in some states that are probably pushing the open up agenda more than others. And yeah, it ultimately is just a giant guessing game that we all have, right? And, you know, hopefully at some point in the not too distant future, it changes from a guessing game to some sort of definitive timeline. But I think there's going to have to be a lot of changes in the U.S. overall before we can come up with some sort of cohesive sort of reopening plan for the whole country. So, but back to the live streaming stuff real quick. So were you the first on Noon Chorus, or was one of the first, right?
Definitely one of the first. Yeah, it was like setting up for that, like the first few ones when we were trying to figure out how to like run a separate audio software that could pretty much. So I'm just gonna go back to the start. So during like the first live stream that I did, it was just like Instagram live. So it was just like I kind of just had like an amp, and then I moved it around like for Madeline and Ryan, my day to day, and then my manager just kind of like told me, you know, like where in the room sounded best on a phone call, because I didn't use a microphone or anything. But then getting into like the live stream world where you actually want to sound good, or at least for me, because like it doesn't sound great just me with the guitar. It was pretty much trying to figure out like a software that could take multiple inputs and then also do video at the same time. So it was just like such a nightmare trying to figure that out. And basically then that software hooked up with Noon Chorus, and now I think everything's way smoother. But a nightmare, not as in like on Noon Chorus's part, just like in general, kind of figure out how to take the live stream up a notch to like sonically, you know, improve it was
I mean, I think when you're charging a ticket for it, that certainly becomes something that you're going to be a lot more conscious of. Did your background in production sort of help navigate all of that, or?
Well, to me it was frustrating because I wanted more inputs, but we couldn't figure out. I mean, I'm not even joking. I think like the first time we set up for Noon Chorus, it was like Kevin and I, who does tech for 10 Atoms, were on the phone for like 5 hours back and forth the day of. And then the second time because I have all the audio files, like all the tracks for every record. And so I was going to put together like some background mixes to have going. Pretty much what I wanted was more than 2 inputs. And ideally I could set up as many inputs as I want and mix it and have it like seamless, go through a software program that seamlessly also did video that Noon Chorus could then coordinate with, but wasn't really able to do that. So I was kind of like pulling out tricks from every angle, like buying, you know, not this, but like different background setups and light. I got like a little LED light that would like go with the sound. I had like a bubble machine at one point. Like I was just trying to make it look. We have these giant soft serve cones that we'll put on like 2 of the amps on stage, and I was like plugging those in. I just really felt like I already felt doing just even like Instagram live playing, like I was just like not, it just wasn't my thing. And so the idea of charging anybody to like see me play solo was just so crazy to me that I just felt like I was ripping people off. I mean, I wasn't. I put so much work into like reconfiguring those songs for it to like make sense with just me and the guitar, because some of them too on the new record, it was like I wrote on bass and then like just playing bass and singing whatever. But so yeah, I was trying to like add in a lot of things to make it feel like it was worth someone to like pay to see.
And you know, speaking of the ticketed aspect of some of those streams, is that something that has been sort of financially viable, or is it sort of just helping cover the cost and whatnot, or?
I think the big thing is like basically no, because how many live streams can you do? You know what I'm saying? Like the same thing multiple times. It's like by the 3rd time that we did it, I think it was just 2 on Noon Course and then 1 on Instagram Live. But like by that time, it was just like, who else? You know, you just have to spread it out so strategically. But I mean, it's a great chunk of money, but like in comparison to actually being on the road, it's nothing, you know? So, and also too, like I probably could have charged, I'm always like trying to charge less and less for tickets. And I probably could have just charged more, and then it would have been like a little bit more financially, you know, better. But I don't remember how much I charged, but you know, I'm always just like, the whole thing is just so new to me, I feel like. And so it was just like, I didn't feel comfortable charging whatever I probably could have that would have made it make a little bit more sense financially. But, you know.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, the whole thing is very new for almost all of us. You know, as a venue, we've done our fair share of streams from the club, and there's a learning curve and it's steep. Jim, you've done a number of streams yourself. Have they all been solo?
Yeah, I think so. I think early on me and the drummer there might have been like a group of us doing basically like radio station drop by acoustic thing. But for the most part, it's been me. It's just easier, you know. I mean, like we can't do the thing we want to do, so like just, you know, forget that. What can I do? And you know, try not to be bummed out about giving the thing I want to have happen, and just, you know, to make that happen, it's just me solo.
Yeah,
that's just the easiest.
Have you experienced any sort of challenges that you faced with the streaming stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, what we've put out there has been pre-recorded. At the very beginning, we did live, but since then, it's been all like pre-recorded. Like our festival cancellation parties we've filmed have all been pre-records and not live streams, of course, because it's just, you know, I think there's and this is actually something I'd like to I'm curious about. I think it's really the Wild West out there with what you put out and what people want, you know, because like it seems like what you can do now is like you're either making a kick-ass concert film or you're doing a live thing, and there's limitations, there's pros and cons to both. And I don't know if we've quite figured that out. I'm not sure if it's sort of a moving target, you know, like how valuable is it to be watching something as it's happening and not get necessarily the technical production quality that you would have if you were able to pre-record and edit and have multiple cameras. You can make it look and sound better if you give yourself that time to edit, or you know, have a proper multi-track mix where you're not just on the fly of the audio. At Belly Up, when you said you do live streams, like, does anybody remember Fab Channel? Based
No.
out of Amsterdam. They were a website that I think Milkveg, Paradiso, and maybe a couple other clubs around there. But they would multi-track your show and do a multi-cam shoot, and they would put it out on Fab Channel, which hosted all these things. And it was like the most amazing, awesome resource. It looked and sounded great. And I was thinking about when we were discussing like what we're gonna do with any kind of live stream setup. We kicked around the idea of, you know, setting up cameras all around our studio here and playing, running into Pro Tools and using that as the audio, and having what could we do? There's not a lot of prosumer software cameras out there that are really easy for that. And I was thinking, if you could nail that, you could set that up in any venue and have that ready to go as part of maybe your contract. Maybe some artists would be cool with it, maybe not, but it would open up, you know, it's an element of what's happening now that I think like could work outside of now if you could nail it, you know? So at Belly Up, when you're saying you're doing streams, is it like a multicam setup with like a desk feed that goes out? Like,
yeah, it's a you know, it's a 5-camera HD shoot with you know, we do some pre-recorded, we do some that are live. The live ones are sort of edited on the fly, and we have had a lot of talk about what all that means once audiences return to venues, and if there is a financial model where that can benefit the artist and the venue, you know, further down the road. And I think there's still a lot of questions there, you know.
yeah, I mean, at the least, it could be like a merch item that if you go there, you could buy a multi-cam shoot of the concert you were at. As something, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's the Wild West, man, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, like you said, everybody's still trying to figure everything out with this. You know, Adam, I know you guys haven't really been able to do any streaming stuff because you guys are so spread out. But what's your take on streaming?
Well, Sarah and I did one. It was actually, now that I think about it, it was a fundraiser for NIVA. It was actually, I think it was the night after the George Floyd murder. It was because I remember being really stressed out during the day and just thinking, should we be doing this? What's going on? And we did the performance, and neither of us are very technical. We're not savvy. And so even just trying to set up we did it in front of in our living room, and it felt like a lot of work, and I was still nervous, like I was playing a regular show. And we were like, okay, cool, we did it, and that's gonna be the one. And we have decided that it's just not how we want to perform right now. And yeah, because our bandmates are all over, it just makes it harder. So when it comes to trying to raise money for the band and for ourselves and for our crew as well, yeah, I mean, we did a Kickstarter to try to make up the losses from the tour. A lot of merch heavy stuff. We basically put our yearly events, which are the Cumberland Caverns in Tennessee and the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, we put those on sale and said, hey, it might not be this year, this is just for the next one. And we put that out there. Almost, we're not spending the money, it's just sitting there as a emergency fund, essentially. And fans have been amazing about reschedules. They've just been so generous in everything that we try to do. And so we did that in like May 1st, and that was really helpful. And we got all our debts settled, and I was able to pay our band and crew for the work that they had already done. And then the other things that we've done is this fall, we recorded, and it's coming out in like a month. We made a Christmas album, which is something I've always wanted to do because I actually love like old timey Christmas stuff, and we never would have had time to do it. So I tried to lean into the idea of opportunity by being home instead of trying to like do something that's an approximation, kind of like Jim was saying, like it's just easier for him to do something new and different, which is him playing his thing. In this case, I thought, well, I was never gonna have time to make a Christmas record. So we did a recording with the band where drummer recorded at home in Oregon. We had 2 members at a time in a studio that was massive here in Louisville, Kentucky, with 1 engineer in a different room, and everybody had masks on. And then when those people finished their parts, another person would come in and they'd do their parts, and then another person would do theirs. And it actually worked pretty well. And we got to see each other from a distance. And so that was like one of the pivots. And then I was convinced finally to do a Patreon, which we started like 3 weeks ago, which I was sort of opposed to before. And now I'm actually having fun with because I'm just like writing about, I took our list of the 1,800 shows we played in this band. I started with the first show, and I'm just trying to remember everything I can. I'm doing like a multimedia journal and like a little podcast. I'm just interviewing people in the music world, like tour managers, and like I'm going to interview Jackie Becker from Up to 11 in Kansas soon. She just agreed. It's been, honestly, the Patreon is giving me something to focus on and do through the winter. I just didn't want to get depressed, honestly. I wanted to do something. I don't want to mess with technology and do live streams. I don't want to do drive-in shows. I just don't want to. And so I found something that I'm willing to do. And I'm actually having a lot of fun. I'm finding like recordings that I made when I was 16 that are fucking terrible. I mean, but it's cute, and it's like I'm sharing a couple and just trying to be a little less self-conscious about the whole thing. You know, it's been
right on.
It's been interesting though. It's different.
So I want to touch on one more thing that before we sort of start running out of time here. Obviously, with the election next week, it's a big time for not only U.S. politics, but global politics. And as artists, you guys have these platforms to speak out to larger groups of people about ideas like reminding people to vote, or supporting Black Lives Matter, or any one of a number of causes. So what's it like sort of balancing messaging that is maybe a bit more politically inclined, or however you might want to put it, versus the stuff that you have to put out there about what the band is doing? Alicia, you want to start?
Yeah, it's really hard for me because, well, I've never really been like timid to post that stuff anyway, and I feel like most of Bully's audience are like aware of that and are a little bit on the same page. But it's just hard because those posts haven't gotten any traction. Like, it's like, and with the way that social media is, like, the whole algorithm is like, if something isn't instantly clicked on, then the less exposure it has. So it's just like kind of frustrating. I think there's just like so much information out there right now that maybe, I don't know, it's like getting a little buried or ignored, which I think is like a good problem to have if people feel like they're aware of the resources. But that's been the main thing for me, is like seeing posts like that, and it's just like 100 likes versus like 3,000 on something else. And so it's just like strange. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like on another like personal level, I feel like really over the past like 2 months, I've really kind of had to like monitor my intake of everything, because like for everybody, I'm sure it just started to feel like very grim and very heavy, and I was like, I can't wake up with NPR anymore, and I still get the New York Times like updates on my phone constantly, but like I can't spend my like and this is all a privilege too, but like I can't spend my days bearing in the news. I need to figure out my time of the day where I keep updated with everything, and then figure out what I'm going to do from there. But like as far as bully social media, like recently with voting and stuff, I've just been pairing up with Headcount and other things like that. There's like the Equity Alliance and a bunch of things in Tennessee that have been doing stuff for voting, and then before that and still now stuff for Black Lives Matter. And with Nashville, we had the tornado hit, so there's just all sorts of things. But yeah, it's just kind of like teaming up with those people, figuring out where you can funnel donations, and then kind of seeing what you can do for them and what they're kind of trying to push that week.
Sure. Jim, what do you think about that?
It's very interesting. I mean, we've done stuff with Headcount. I just made a full-on straight PSA for I Will Vote. That's pretty hilarious because it's so straight. It's tricky, man. Like I've personally tried to window down what I'm putting out there to be helpful for people like in Arizona. Like if you live in Maricopa County, here's where you can check to see if your signature has been verified and your ballot's been counted. Like here are the Dropbox places if you live in Maricopa County. Like, you know, like really focusing in on that, because I feel like Alicia was saying, like it does feel overwhelming not to be able to just kind of yell into the void of, you know, when you put something out there into that, you're going right into the information of everything. And if you're, you know, I mean, I think our fans already know like where we stand on things. And I don't know if a testimonial from us is really going to move somebody at this point. It was really interesting though. Like we put out probably the most vanilla thing ever with Headcount. Like if you're thinking about voting, you might want to have a plan, because things change. And it was just, I don't know. I think people being at home with their computers and, you know, the outrage economy has definitely conditioned people just to be pissed off and to be looking for things to be pissed off. And it's frightening. So, I mean, there's definitely some fatigue there.
It is interesting that a simple message about, you know, reminding people to vote can all of a sudden become completely politicized in the comments section.
Yeah.
It's just,
don't forget to vote.
You don't have to say anything else. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah.
Like, no,
yeah,
dude.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's weird too, because like that was like another thing too, where I felt like it was like every time I knew I was going to post, I was going to get however many people wanting to argue. And there's certain days where it's like, I just can't fucking do this. Like, I don't want to fucking argue. Like, I don't want this negativity right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some people live to argue.
Adam, what about you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think to answer your question, my experience with posting about things that are, you know, current events related is that I think that a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to listen to a celebrity or, you know, celebrity. That, thank you, first of all, very, very nice. But people say they don't want to hear celebrities' opinions on politics and stuff. But I think it kind of comes from a different place. I think that people who have been able to be successful in something that they've worked at doing and suddenly have this audience and this platform, sometimes they feel like an obligation to try to use that platform to do what they believe in. And so, you know, we've always done a lot of fundraising. One of the things we'll do a lot is we'll just do, like, something will happen and we'll say, oh, today, anything you buy from our web store, 100% of the profits or 50% of the profits will go to this cause. And people will pony up, and they'll, you know, basically, like, we just don't make any money, but maybe in one day you raise $2,000 or something for, you know, the bail project or something. And like, so it's pretty cool. And it's a really effective way to use this audience to do something that you believe in. And yeah, you can get some of the serpents come out. And I live in Louisville, Kentucky, where we've had a lot going on because of the Breonna Taylor murder. And we have felt, because it's our city, that, you know, we need to get involved. And so, I mean, since May, I mean, we've done a lot of like food drops for protesters. We're bailing people out. You know, we're getting in the mix, and some people don't like that. But I will say that I've tried to engage respectfully with people who have opposed the few posts that I make. I try to make sure that my posts are extremely researched. I often have people I trust vet them if I'm going to do something like a big post about a political thing, to make sure that it's fact-based, and I'm trying to ask for only actionable things, right? Like Jim was saying about, like, this is where you can go get this specific thing done. So I try to be really specific about what I'm saying, so that there's not a lot of people putting words in my mouth. And I try to be respectful to the people who usually honestly just don't have all the information. And if you talk to them like a person, you can help them understand where you're coming from and not let them turn you into a boogeyman. So it's been a lot of work, though. The emotional labor, like Alicia was saying, is huge. And there have been days where I say, I'm posting today, and I'm going to have to spend 4 hours calmly talking to a person who's calling me a commie scum or something. Like,
sure.
What? like I'm sorry, sir, we do not have communism in America. You know, it's like nobody. No. So,
Alicia, did you have something you want to chime in with?
Yeah, I do think that, like, and I've thought this like for years, it was really like started to manifest during the Trump election, when it was just like, fuck Trump, 4 years ago, the one. And I started to really be mindful of, like, when I'm going to post, to instead just like expel more negativity, to actually provide some sort of like link or resource to how you can fix whatever the, you know, the focus problem that is going on at that time is. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that can be really helpful too, to just be like, as much as I want to be like, you know, whatever, fuck him, it's like, well, how about I just post this, that, where everybody who's kind of thinking that can go and help and donate and stuff. And then it's just like a way to kind of take action, and just to be mindful of that, I think is like kind of refreshing, because it's like it's more like, what can you do, you know?
Sure. So I did fail a little bit here because we are pretty much out of time, and we didn't get a chance to get to the audience questions, but want to throw it back to Moose here to sort of wrap things up for us. And thank you everyone for joining.
That means I get to ask all the questions, right, Pete? Because I got a lot of questions about
exactly.
this. But I've always appreciated Adam's ability to talk to me like a human. So thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Adam. And thank you, Pete. Also, I want to thank NIVA for putting this panel together. This is actually the last discussion as part of this year's Independent Venue Week. Tonight, we have about 30 different programs that span the country. And if you go to independentvenueweek.com, you will see that listing. You will also see links to all of the different items in our fundraiser auction for the NIVA Emergency Relief Fund, which includes a signed Bruno Mars guitar, ukulele, tiny guitar, Ali and AJ signed jean jacket, signed cowbell from some of the members of Blue Oyster Cult, which is actually getting some pretty good bids, signed Lamb of God guitar, and a bunch of other things on here as well. But I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this, especially the speakers and those in attendance, and have a great night. Thank you for making Independent Venue Week a success and everything else that you have all done.